great self-efficacy, this is always going to be true as well. It was true when I started teaching in 1978. It's true today. How many of you have some kids who came to school who have different learning environments, different learning histories, different levels of knowledge, skills, and understanding about where they are in their learning? How many of you have some kids like that? Yeah. So it's always going to be true that we're going to have additional time and support with kids. And I'm going to really help. I'm trying to help you because one of the things I've noticed as I've done this work for the last 12 years is that I see people interpreting intervention as just putting kids in smaller groups and giving them more time. Now that's not a terrible strategy. That actually works for some kids. Just more time in a smaller group. That's not bad. What I'm worried about is when we begin to lose the effort of changing our instructional practices or our materials, or when kids aren't getting it yet. We'll say, well, we're intervening for them, they're still not getting it. And well, what different strategy did you use? As opposed to smaller group and more time. So when I see teams work at their common tests and look at the data, what I really want to hear is what are all the strategies you're going to use to provide additional time and support? Because seriously, all of us probably have an experience in our lives where with more time and maybe even a smaller group, you weren't able to accomplish something. Personal life, think of personal life. That you could practice it over and over and over again. You could get up there and try over and over again, and you never could get really skilled or master what you were trying to do. Turn to a neighbor real quick just to engage with that idea of additional time and support. Students will require additional or unique instructional strategies. What's something that in your personal life you've tried with more time and never mastered? Go ahead. Golfers go golf.
Because alcohol doesn't help.
Keep you loose. Keep you loose. The first one that comes to mind is golf, right? If you ever try to play golf, it's hard to do. And more practice is that. But the latest one is not golf for me. The latest one is paddleboarding. My experience with paddleboarding. You know what I'm talking about, paddleboarding? So Springfield, Missouri, we've got the beautiful lake called Table Rock Lake. And I have some friends that have a cabin there. They have all the toys, right? They have a paddleboard. So I thought, oh, it looks healthy even. It looks like you're going to get like a workout in, you know? So I get on the paddleboard and I can do it. Yay. I mean, really, it wasn't that hard. Pretty soon we were having like races on the paddleboards, that kind of stuff. And sometimes you'd fall off, but most of the time, if you were just taking your time, you could do it. So I have mastered paddleboard until I went to see my kids that live down in Florida. And they have a paddleboard, and we went out to the ocean. And I tried the paddleboard on the ocean. Now, I've told you already, I have a growth mindset. I really think that you can accomplish anything that you set your mind to. So if you were talking to me about perseverance, grit, and determination, I have it, right? And then you kind of see how that interacts when you start struggling with something. So I watched my daughter-in-law do yoga on the paddleboard out in the ocean. My 6-year-old granddaughter was paddleboarding, right? My son just paddleboards all over the place. I go, well, that can't be too hard. I can do it on the Table Rock Lake. So I go out there, and seriously, I could not get on that board for more than 4 seconds if I was in the water. So it was 30, 45 minutes of up, down, up, down, up, down. I lost my hat. I lost my sunglasses. We're not even talking the ocean. We're talking the Gulf of Mexico. Right? That's what they do. This is crazy. I mean, I should be able to do this. I could do it in one setting. I mastered it in one setting. Now I can't do this. This is absurd, right? And it wasn't because I'd had too much beer on the beach. It was, I was sober. I could do it, right? And then I look over at the beach after 45 minutes, and my wife is cracking up. My son has been videotaping. It's not a loud thing. And then I look at the rest of the beach, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I've been entertaining the entire beach for 45 minutes, right? And I came in that feedback just defeated me like this. And so I came back in, and I just felt so defeated, like I couldn't. And then some guy comes over to me, and he says, that was kind of fun to watch. I said, thanks. He says, but you know, to be honest with you, I felt sorry for you because you were never going to be able to do that. I said, well, I thought I could, though. He says, yeah, but you don't understand. You have the wrong board. Someone your size, he said, not a board for a person that weighs 100 pounds less than you. You need a board with 2 stabilizing fins, and you got to hold the paddle a little differently, and you need to get out a little bit further in the ocean, the water than you were. You were right where the waves were breaking. You're never going to be able to do this, and I didn't know all that. So he just gave me, I need a different tool, a different resource, something unique to the current situation for practice that I had available. So when we think about this, I'm always really hopeful that when teachers are sharing ideas, one of the giant concepts of the common formative assessment was to share strategies with one another, to build tools in our toolboxes, but we also try to intervene for kids. And when we intervene for kids, sometimes you have to think differently about how you approach that. I mean, my mom understood it in 1962. I always share this out of great respect to my mom. She was a pioneer in Missouri as a special education teacher. She had to approach kids, and you've got to understand, that was back in the day when we didn't put special ed kids in the classrooms. This was funded by Easter Seals. It wasn't funded by the public schools back then. And here she is learning and using different tools and resources to help kids who had learning areas that they were struggling in. So I always wondered, do we use manipulatives? Do we use rhyme? Do we use mnemonic? You know that Marcia Tate stuff? Dr. Marcia Tate? Is that a name familiar to you? Yeah, her stuff is really phenomenal, isn't it? So Dr. Marcia Tate writes all these books that are helpful for teachers. I always expect to see them in teachers' libraries, in a school. Reading worksheets won't grow dendrites. Math worksheets won't grow dendrites. Sit and get won't grow dendrites. And she gives you these really rock-solid 20 strategies that use different ways of growing dendrites with students. So when you're struggling, and more time and smaller group isn't working, I kind of hope you pull out some of those strategies that you might have, because you did your very best job the first time with instruction. Now we need to think about maybe approaching it a little differently with kids to connect them to learning differently. So the exception to this is, we're always going to have kids that do things, that need additional time and support. You need unique strategies, and we're going to have to try some strategies that we've never tried before. Something else that's kind of unique to us is this. I mean, this is never going to go away. I mean, this will always be true. That kids actually who come from disadvantaged backgrounds even can overcome some of those things that impact their learning because of that background, because of great teachers. Right? How many of you have some kids who come from a difficult background? Now, in Springfield, Missouri, I always worked in high poverty schools. That was just my gig, right? So anywhere from 60 to 90% free and reduced lunch. I love that. I love that work, right? Because we could prove that it doesn't matter where a kid comes from, you can actually change and help them learn if you move beyond loving them to having high expectations for them. That's the difference that we made in my last school. As the teachers, I had great teachers in that last school. Campbell Elementary School, home of the Cougars, right? Fabulous heart. You could not outwork these teachers. And yet, they had gotten the worst scores ever. You know, they were morally defeated. They're on the maybe we need to close this school list. You know, anything. But these teachers love kids. They just had low expectations because of where, in other words, that 1.62 effect size was affecting them. They didn't have that. Their attitude is there's no way we can get some kids to achieve at high levels because of their parents. I mean, they would look at that day and go, well, look, 50% of our parents didn't graduate from high school. How could we ever get kids to learn at high levels? Now, these parents are moving all the time. They have 135% mobility rate. How can we ever get kids to learn at high levels? I said, look, I love kids, but we have to have higher expectations for kids. I mean, you find the stories about a school are found in what the culture, you know, they talk about school culture a lot and how important school culture is. Culture is found in the stories that people tell. It's found in what we say about kids. I ran across a teacher, I'm 2 weeks on the job at Campbell, and Debbie is really upset. She is just ready to explode because her parents, she gave her kids a homework assignment, okay, and they didn't do it. Only half the kids did it. And she's at the copy machine right outside my office, and she goes, Tim, I know you're new to this school, but I don't know what we're going to do. Until these parents start helping these kids with their homework, there's never a way we're going to get off this bad school list. Look, I gave a homework assignment last night, and only half my kids did it. Half, Tim, half the kids did it. I'm just asking parents to check their backpacks and sit down and help them with third grade math, for Pete's sakes. They won't even do it. See the story? She's beginning to think that there's nothing you can do, there's nothing we can do. Then she took it back, oh, okay, we have one kid whose parent helped them. Look, look at this. It's in the parent's handwriting. The parent did the work for them, and it's all wrong, and this is third grade math. Okay, slow down, just settle down, right? And I said, you're right, you don't know me that well, but look, here's the truth. We have to focus on the things we can change rather than the things that we can't. Now, you're not going to get new parents. You're not going to go home and make sure their parents check the backpacks. Debbie, I said, I've been to their homes, and I've sat down on sofas. I mean, in 2 weeks on this job, I sat down on sofas, and I had come from a school like you guys, right? But I'm going, wow. Debbie, I sat down on sofas, and I thought, don't sit here. You shouldn't sit here, Tim. You're going to walk away with something that's going to itch. You know, it's kind of the environment. You know what I'm talking about. Okay? I said, look, I've been to homes, I've sat on ice chests, and I've been to homes where I've had to ask them to turn the television, and there's chaos going on all around. I said, I don't used to see a desk and a couple of chairs for kids to get help with. They're not doing that. So let's focus on the things we can change rather than the things that we can't. She did not believe at the time that the teacher was the key contributor to student learning. She believed that the parents and the home environment are the key contributor to student learning. But she didn't like my answer. I mean, sometimes you create discomfort in your answers when you're on a journey, right? She stormed away, really upset that I had not supported her in the concept that kids can't learn because of their parents. She went storming away right back to her classroom upset with me. I said, well, that's not a good start to the school year and to my new tenure at this school. A year later, she's recognized as our district. Our district is the largest district in the state of Missouri, right? She's recognized as the most outstanding communications arts teacher in the district. And she wrote me a note, and she said, when she received that recognition, she said, I just want you to know that one conversation we had at the copy machine changed what I thought I was supposed to be about as a teacher. She didn't understand that kids who come from disadvantaged homes can learn at high levels, but it's the teachers and how they react and focus on the right things that actually make the difference for those kids. So that's an exception to this shelf life rule. And here's the other exception. I do not think there will ever be a time in education again in the United States where we won't work collaboratively. I am amazed after 12 years of doing this, after knowing the work of Dr. Rick DeFore since they wrote their first book in 1998, I am amazed that still this year we'll have over 35,000 teachers who experience sometimes some of them the first time, the idea of working collaboratively. I don't think we're ever going to stop doing that. I don't think anybody's going to come back 10 years from now and go, remember when we talked about working collaboratively? Wasn't that a kooky idea? Shouldn't that have gone on the shelf? Now, every now and then I run across people who don't do PLC deep enough, and they just take it from a base level of, well, we're answering 4 questions. But if we take it deep enough, you'll never stop and never wander away from the idea of working collaboratively with the adults in that building. So that's not going to be an exception to the shelf life rule at all. What we know from the science of our profession, again, Dr. John Hattie, this is number 2 on his list of the things that affect student achievement, enhance student achievement. A 1.57 effect size with collective teacher efficacy. So first of all, it's your belief, your individual belief. Then it goes into the second biggest thing we should be doing is organizing for us to execute, right? A plan of action, the plans of action that help create and manage a prospective situation. Turn to your neighbor real quick, just kind of a test question, apply the concept, apply this. Collective efficacy, this is what it means. So now let's think about how we apply that. First of all, what I'd like you to do is take the concept of a 1.57 effect size. And I'd like you to describe it to the person, the group of people right around you, what you think that number means. In the science of our profession, what does a 1.57 effect size really mean? If you're trying to explain it to a layman out in the community and say, this is why we work collaboratively, this is why we organize for late starts or early releases. Then if you're trying to explain it from that concept of 1.57 effect size, what would you say about it? How would you connect them to that number, to that definition from Hattie's work? Real quick, conversation, just reflect, apply. That's knowledge up there. How do you apply that knowledge? How would you help people understand why we do it? Yeah, so some people say, well, that's huge. Some people say that actually it comes close to quadrupling the speed of learning, right? That would be closing gaps like crazy if we organize for that to happen, right? 1.57 effect size, that would actually be evidence of why you do what you do. That's why I don't think we'll ever go away from it. I think that's always going to be on the list, right? 1.57 effect size, here's how it affects us, right? It affects students because teachers believe they can reach their students and they can overcome negative external forces. It affects students and enhances their learning because we're more persistent when we work collaboratively. If you were living back in the day when you didn't work collaboratively, it was just all on you. All on you. All on your shoulders to try to figure out how to close gaps for kids. That's why this is such powerful understanding of the science behind the concept of professional learning communities as well as what it's all about. We're more persistent, we plan more and more effectively. That affects students in their learning. How does it affect students in their learning? We accept responsibility. We don't blame their parents. We don't blame the state. We don't blame anything. We just take a look at, well, what do we need to do? Here's where we are. Here's where we need to be. What are we going to do? That's called collective inquiry, right? We're not discouraged even if we have some temporary collective inquiry. Coming back to it, I mean, right? The entire staff, this is our definition of our process that you've been engaged in, that your model school's in, right? I mean, you stop and think about it. Does that not fit who you guys are? You engage in an ongoing collaborative process, right, of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for your students. I love it when people live the process and understand it. They understand that you're not okay with some things, right? But just a quick, just to drive the point, right? I think it drives the point.
Ever wondered what the most commonly used word in the world is? Okay. Man's favorite word is one that means all right, satisfactory, not bad. So why invent the light bulb when candles are okay? Why make lifts if stairs Earth's okay, why couldn't the moon be? Clearly not everybody believes okay is okay. Who knows? And we were wondering, what would the world be like if its favorite word wasn't okay? What if we could change it? What if the word was, what if?
Honda had it right? What if? Yeah, Eric Waddell is the superintendent at Lincolnshire, Adlai Stevenson High School, where all this began. He was actually a social studies teacher when Rick DeFore was the principal in that building, right? Now he's the superintendent of the district. He says the truth is, candles were okay. You couldn't create a better source of light by just reinventing the candle. You had to have a what if. What if we do some things differently, right? To illuminate the world. So when I think about that, I think, well, we have a chance to really deepen our understanding of why we do what we do and where we're going with this, kind of getting ourselves excited, right? So would you quickly do this? Stand up, all right? And feel free to move outside these seats if you want to, but I'd like you to partner with one other person, all right? Make it somebody you haven't talked to around you yet, all right? Make it somebody you have not talked to that is around you, all right? Partner up with somebody.
I love it.
Sorry, I forgot to say.
Sure, that'd be great.
Oh. Yeah. All right. The second thing I want you to do is I'd like you to label off. One of you would be letter A, the other person letter B. Do that very quickly. Letter A, letter B. You ready? Raise your hand if you're letter A. Just make sure we don't need interventions. Okay. Letter B, raise your hand. Okay, so letter A. Raise your hand again. Just a reminder, if you're letter A, it means one of two things. Well, actually, it means three things. You're going to go first, right? It also means that you are either the risk taker of the two of you because you agreed, you said, I'll be A, or it means you're too slow in the morning and you let the other person say, you letter A. It's always going to happen. One of those three things is going to happen. So let's do this. First thing I'd like to make it easy for you. Letter A, let's do the easy one. Letter A, I would like for you to pantomime so this person never forgets. I'd like for you to do some physical action that illustrates your favorite thing that you did this summer. They'll never forget you for this. Your favorite thing you did this summer. Letter B, try to guess what it is. Letter B, try to guess what it is. Letter A, go.
Vacation. It's been a lot of time in the plane. We went to almost all the sides of the U.S. So, vacation. No. Yeah.
All right, so how many of you were successful with that? Your letter B was able to guess what you did. Raise your hand. If not, I guess let letter B go. Letter B, your turn. You demonstrate through pantomime action what your favorite thing to do was this summer. So loosen your bodies up. Here you go. Letter B. Yes.
Biking?
Yes, it wasn't me.
Were you like lifting it? Were you biking?
But
That's awesome.
while I was
Now, what's your
there,
first name?
by the poolside.
Stephanie.
So I don't know just about everybody's historical pictures. And like lots. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Perfect. This is my 8th year, so that's awesome. I've always been at Wilson. Yeah. Right. So, yeah. So I've been teaching for 8 years, but when I was one teacher, and a special teacher, and now
Join back in with me. So now you know letter A and letter B, your partner a little bit better. At least you know what they like to do during the summer. What I'd like to do is kind of explore the idea of collective inquiry. I mean, to me, that's like the best characteristic of a professional learning community. It's what actually creates the actions that actually lead to more students achieving at high levels. Collective inquiry requires a group of people asking questions of each other, right? Asking questions of each other. So that's the first question that I have for you. Letter A, I want you want you to explain and talk to letter B on what are the most important, the most asked questions among members of your professional learning community, your collaborative team. What are the questions that come up the most when you're working collaboratively, that you hear over and it could be a series of questions, but it could be at least one or more. What questions usually get dealt with and asked that you search answers for in your collaborative team? Okay, ready? Letter A, go.
So I would say most of our conversations right now are centered around what did you do with the kids? You know, tell me about your activity that you did. Side note, but we are recreating our classes. We used to have to travel to like we have a elementary school, but now we're just doing it on the computer. And so we're gonna try and really focus this year on those 4 questions and try and dive in more to that. Yeah, and get to that data piece, you know, on the formative assessments. So move from that just collaborating on like what we're gonna do, what we're gonna teach, to having what were our results, and then how can we change that. So yeah, and I'm so excited. Like you guys have a nice framework here. Wednesday, bring your data. Yeah. But I think that's important. Yeah, we're working towards it. Yes. I think so. Yeah. Because we just really been focusing on this work, and so my partner's digging numbers are here. So yeah. So, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. And that's what we knew we had to make some changes because we felt in our field September's many times traveling. And then
Okay, so letter B, your turn, so bring us all back. So letter B, I want you to share out loud. So I want to get a sample, kind of get a feel for the group about the kind of questions that happen in the team meeting. So letter B, shout out, share out some of the things that letter A was sharing with you, the questions that people ask in their team meetings. Just so I get a feel for our understanding of how to apply that concept of the collective inquiry.
How did you approach that?
How did you approach that particular task or that particular learning target? Good. What else? What could we do differently? I love that question. That's thinking, take the blinders off. Oh, we love that question. Blinders off. What can we do differently? Right? What else?
What are you doing that's working?
What are you doing that's working? I love it. What else?
Where can we find resources?
Where can we find some resources? I've ran across a teacher who's on this team. She goes, she's kind of like she's newer to the profession, but she really had high remarks for her and comments for her team. She says, we always, if we can't figure it out, we start searching for other resources. We don't wait for somebody to provide them for us. We don't sit down and go, well, I don't know what else to do. We can go to the internet and we'll engage in that level of collective inquiry if we couldn't find it from within. Yeah, so they go seeking other resources. Nice. What else? What other questions would you ask in a professional learning community engaging in collective inquiry?
What works for X students?
What's the timeline for getting this done? I mean, how can we measure towards that timeline, right? What strategy we need to do within that timeline? What else? Somebody had another one.
What works for X students that in your classroom?
Say that again?
What works for X in your classroom?
What works for
Whatever Bob or
situation
Joe
in your classroom? Okay, good. What else? Good one. What else?
How do we impact new standards?
Say that again?
So awkward. How to impact new standards, like for our science team?
Okay, so let's unpack some, so how do we unpack, what's a good way of unpacking these standards so that we put them into 2 things? Student-friendly terms and explicit success criteria. Yeah, both those things have to happen, right? What else? Somebody had another.
I just said, how do we meet all students' needs?
How do we meet all students' needs, right? What else? What other questions would you ask? I mean, you kind of capture a lot of it, but we also should hear, like Stephen said, and other schools said, well, how do we help kids who are disconnected with the learning environment? How do we help kids who aren't coming to school regularly? How do we help kids who need more support outside of our classroom time? How do we respond in our classrooms when we get a test paper back? How do you increase response rates among kids, right? How do you have kids track and study their progress? Anything related to learning. You're asking, how do you get more kids to come to school? If you're having, right? How do you address this kid who has high absenteeism, right? Or who doesn't have friends, or who is not connected socially to the school, or who's not engaged in the co-curricular aspect of our school? Because we understand that when kids are engaged in co-curricular activities, they learn to higher levels, right? All these questions should be part of our, it's not just 4. While some of them are directly related to the 4, there are other questions we have to ask. I mean, it's not uncommon, right, to think about some questions, like, how do those questions, when you ask those, okay, how do those questions extend and enrich your professional practice? So letter B, that's your chance. How would asking the questions that we've just shared out loud here, how could that actually influence our professional practices that we are trying to get absolutely great at? All right? So the questions that letter A was sharing, that you guys were talking about, your job is to think about applying this concept of how does it improve your professional practices by asking those questions. Ready? Go.
It's my first year teaching, so I'm trying to you don't want to hear me. Are you very like that's my friend? Oh my god. We still get to know each other and then just have to like, you know, so sometimes it's like building relationships I don't feel like we're all being sexy.
Right. And then you all have to brainstorm each other. Right. Because as long as we're going up to the state standard, we have the same assessments, we're good. Now we can add in that grading. So this is how I like to do it. Yeah. I can be creative on my own, and that's okay. Especially because you're in kindergarten, then you're at second grade. Okay.
So they split our whole team up.
Okay, so everybody's back. So when Dr. Richard Moore and Bob Ager wrote their first book, they were very clear that the term professional learning community was not supposed to be an acronym. It had deep meaning, right? To them, as they explained it in their resources and tried to develop. And you guys know they were on that journey for about 20 years before they wrote their book. They had all kinds of missteps and didn't understand where they were headed at first, and then their teachers really helped them. Those 4 questions come from teachers who got tired of just hanging out together because they carved out time for collaboration, but didn't give them any meaningful direction to that. So when they defined their concept, they said, well, let's think of ourselves as a profession and the people employed as professionals. So when you interview for a job, you're interviewing with the concept of they're looking for a professional, someone with an expertise in their field, who's willing to continue to advance in training and deepen their understanding. So the concept is that's why you're here and why you're teaching in this district. This district has invested and has accepted the concepts really deeply to where you're model schools, right? Because they wouldn't hire someone who doesn't fit that bill. They wouldn't let you have a contract if they didn't think of you as a professional. That's awesome. It also means you're learning. The concept, professional learning, means the adults are learning together to enhance their effectiveness in the classroom by asking certain questions and engaging in collective inquiry, searching for answers. We advocate for learning communities, not teaching communities, and argue the best way to improve student learning is through improving the practices of teachers. This is why we do what we do. And then to be a community with a common sense of purpose, trying to accomplish just something amazing, which is the last question I have for you. And I just want you to have a conversation with each other, okay? So the last question is this. What is the greatest benefit you hope to have happen for you as a result of your meeting together? Whether that's the whole school meeting together, because the whole school is a professional learning community, or meeting together in your collaborative teams. What do you anticipate will be the greatest benefit because you've organized for that to happen? Just a conversation with each other, and I'll bring you back. All right? Greatest benefit. I'll put it on.
I'm sorry. Obviously, you want students to I'm also aware that teachers see that and they know that that came from their work. You know, that achievement is because of their collaboration, because they took the time to kind of step out and engage in this process. So that next year, even though you're going to have a totally different batch of kids, it's still possible. You know, even if they're coming lower or whatever, because you guys work together and you get that. You know, so
Yeah, I think that would be
I want to explore that with you. I know by now, some of you are getting tired of standing. How many are tired of standing now? Yeah, sometimes you get tired. So just do this. Mimic back to the person that you're partnered with what they like to do, and then they'll mimic it back to you, so you'll never forget it. So mimic it back. So here's what I remember you like to do. Here's what I remember you like to do. Mimic it back.
I remember that you like to do this, but you're also doing this because your son is right now.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and all about your
This would have been better. That would have been better.
Yeah, so wherever you are on the journey, it's always a good idea to reconnect to the why, don't you think? Why do we meet collaboratively? What do we hope to have happen? What do we anticipate will happen? Because I think doing that actually reminds ourselves that I have a commitment to make to this group of people. I mean, I have to be fully in. I've got to come into that meeting with the intention of what we said we thought we could have happen. Now, how many of you said this? When I asked the question, what do you anticipate will be the greatest benefit of being on a collaborative team? How many of you said this? Or something along those lines? Not often. I mean, I hear all the other things are really good too. But if you really want to put this into the real context of it, your greatest benefit is it'll help you accomplish this wow. I mean, your mission is a wow statement, isn't it? We often call that a mission statement like that, a BHAG. BHAG, Jim Collins, Good to Great. So Collins put a team together and they studied good companies that they now know as great companies. And they went into those companies and they studied and they identified certain characteristics that all the really great organizations have. One of the characteristics is they all have a BHAG. A BHAG is not someone in your building. A BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Mission statements like that is a big, hairy, audacious goal. It asks of you to create an environment that's going to help kids be lifelong learners. Well, that means you have to identify what that means. How do you help kids become lifelong learners? Well, by equipping them with the skills, knowledge necessary to process information, to learn, unlearn, and sometimes relearn. To be okay with errors, to be investigative, to be explorers, right? To be problem solvers. Now think of that in your classroom. So it's no longer just teaching information to kids, it's helping kids become problem solvers, helping kids work collaboratively, helping kids seek solutions, right? It's a huge thing. When you put in there lifelong learners and productive citizens in a changing society, you went big. So the work of your collaborative teams, while you're doing the work of what do we want kids to learn, and how do we know if they've learned it, and how will we respond if they didn't get it, and how will we respond if they did get it or already know it, it's all driven to accomplish this big, hairy, audacious goal that you have. That's the possibility. So every time you go into a team meeting, knowing your why, you could go in there like, seriously, with a great idea, like enthusiastically, because you could be thinking, if we meet together and we meet about the right things, if we collaborate about the right things, we'll create lifelong learners who will become productive members of society, right? That's huge. Somebody says this, when you know why you do what you do every day, even the toughest days become easier because you're always driven to that. One of my favorite videos that drives that point is this guy, Michael Jr. Michael Jr. is a comedian. Some of you may have seen this video.
The key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why.
I think he has it right.
Because when you know your why, you have options on what to be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what could be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time.
So here's one of his break times.
So you're a musical director? Yes, sir. All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. You do the first part of that, go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. That's what I was saying.
Okay, so here's what he's going to do. He's going to set him up. He's going to ask him to think about the words of that song if some tragedy had happened in his life. And then how would you sing that song with meaning if this tragedy had happened to you? Okay, so here we go.
Amazing grace, how
you think about that? What was the difference? How does that, what we saw there, and some of the actions that were happening around him, how did his singing it or approaching it with knowing his why have a deeper impact on the journey he's on? If we know your why, your what has greater impact because you're walking in and towards your purpose. What did you notice going on around him? Because not only was he singing it with a deeper understanding of the words as he related it to what those words really mean, what did you notice with the people around him? Talk to each other real quick. What did you notice happen around him? Did you see that? You kind of gathered that? I always love, there was no ho-hum going on around him. The first time he sang it, there was ho-hum going on. They were just doing it, going through the motions, and they were just sitting back watching it. Second time he sings it, though, they're up. There's a guy doing this. There's people standing up like this. I don't know if you can tell, there's a young man videotaping on his cell phone, right, to share with others because it was catching on. And I'm thinking, wouldn't that be great if, when we went into team meetings, we went in there with that? Wouldn't that be cool? Oh man, let's do this. Let's unwrap some standards. Let's do it, right? Let's put them into student-friendly terms and explicit success criteria. Yeah, let's make that happen. Ooh, we're going to write a common assessment. I can't wait to write a common assessment. Let's do the common. Look at data. Yes, let's look at data. We need to know what's working, what isn't working. This is awesome that they carved out time for us to do that. Wouldn't that be great if you went to meetings like that? How many of you go to your meetings like that? Yeah, some people do. No, seriously, some people go, I would never do this differently. I would never go back to a time when I had to teach in isolation. I value this time so much with my colleagues because it improves me, it helps us improve as a team to be the world's best. I mean, it depends on how you go, right? Your attitude really does matter, right? So I kind of wonder sometimes if people have connected the dots of the professional learning community beyond 4 questions. To really see that the journey they're on will actually accomplish a BHAG. BHAG, that Big Hair Audacious Goal, they described it like this. It's like the NASA moon mission. During Kennedy's days, right? When they were racing to the moon against it's Russia. Remember that? And we did it. He says, like, Kennedy said this, why go to the moon? Where are the social studies teachers in here? What did he say? Why go to the moon? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard. That'll be the best measure of us. It's one we are willing to win. That's what we mean by a BHAG, like your mission statement. So when you apply the concepts of professional learning community, know your why, but when you're answering questions, answer all the questions. When you're struggling with kids who are not motivated, answer that question. What are we going to do? When you're struggling with kids who can't comprehend the text, what are you going to do about that? When you're struggling with kids who don't turn their work in, what are you going to do with that, right? What is your response? Anticipate it, and then respond, and don't let kids off the hook. Insist that they learn at high levels. That's one of the things that look, when you know your why, do it for your own. Do it like you wanted to have it done for your own kids. How many of you have kids who go to this school district? Don't you want them just to have the world's greatest teachers? And aren't you so glad that the district organized in a way that they can have the world's best teachers in their experiences? Not just in kindergarten, not just in what we notice about a model PLC school is that they don't receive parent phone calls about requesting certain teachers. Remember, I don't know if you ever experienced this or not, but there's a time when parents thought they had to, I can call and I get a certain teacher because I don't want my child to have this teacher or that teacher. Here we just accept that notion that we're all great. It doesn't matter which teacher a child has, we have a guarantee that we're going to be the world's, do it for your own kids. Work collaboratively for your own. These are my kids. I finally got these grandkids now, right? I got 4 kids of my own. I got these 6 grandkids. Palmer's not in that picture. He wasn't born at the time. Palmer's pretty new kid to us, right? Palmer's a funny big old guy that we're having a blast with. But my big concern now, I'm always concerned about my daughters, that's my wife right there. Do they look alike? Don't you? They look alike. Seriously, I'm a lucky guy. I'm a lucky guy, right? So that's Miles, and that's Adam, that's Catherine, that's Madeline, that's my wife, that's me. These are grandkids. What I really hope, I mean, these two of them started school. Right? So there's Charlie, she's on the left, Millie's on the right. Charlie's named after me. Yeah, I'm Charlie Brown. Did you know that? I don't go by that. That's my first name, I don't go by it. Remember the Charlie Brown stuff, right? I do hope that they have teachers, they encounter teachers that know how to respond, that teach vicariously, that know their different personalities and know enough about that child and what they need that they'll do everything they can to meet that student and not only meet their needs with knowledge and skills, but also help sustain or move them into a growth mindset. Where are the kindergarten teachers again? Hallelujah for you all. How many of you tried that job? How many of you tried teaching kindergarten? It's hard. I mean, all the jobs are hard. Trust me. I believe all of them are hard. But kindergarten, these kids don't know anything. They don't even know how to ask a question. Yeah, Brad and I were talking about kindergarten jokes. They don't even know how to make a joke, right? And they're funny anyway, right? You ask kids, do you have any questions? They'll say, well, I have a dog. No, questions. Questions. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's all gathered for carpet time. They got to give you hugs first before they gather for carpet time. That's just it. The high school people, if you don't think you can differentiate instruction, just go watch a kindergarten teacher these kids have never had school before, and how, seriously, in one day they've taught them routines, right? They've taught them how to work together at tables of four, all this kind of stuff. It's amazing, right? But I will say this, the one thing that kindergarten teachers almost always get, they almost always receive, at the beginning of the school year, a class of kids who have a growth mindset. Really, right? How many of you have a kindergarten age? Anybody have a kindergarten age child? Doesn't your child think they're going to learn everything? They know they feel like usually they go to school going, I can do this. I can do this, and teacher's going to help me do this, and they don't know the system at all, but they know that you're going to help them do this. And then somewhere along the line, how many of you have some kids, might even be your own kids, might be kids in your classroom who have now developed a fixed mindset. Some of us, where did it come from? We send them off to school with growth mindsets. Now some of them have fixed mindsets. What's the connection? What is it that happens that dampens down a student's internal motivation? Because internal motivation is definitely connected to growth mindset. We all remember this. When internal motivation dampens down because of actions we might take, it affects the student's growth mindset. Without internal motivation, growth mindset becomes more likely to be a fixed mindset. Internal motivation is directly connected to what? Check into it with your neighbor. What is this? Maintaining a student's growth mindset, their internal motivation. The most direct thing we have access and provide kids to is what? That helps either sustain the internal motivation or dampens it down. What is our tool that we have available to us, right? That can either extend or dampen down the internal motivation. Real quick, talk to you. What do you think it is? What's the most powerful tool? The most powerful tool we have.
What teachers say that they
Okay, so the most powerful tool we have, feedback. Some people say that formative assessment is our most powerful tool. It's not. The assessment isn't your most powerful tool. It's your feedback that is your most powerful tool. Feedback comes to students that helps them understand, and not just hearing our words, but seeing how they process and help them process where they are in the learning, right? Your feedback, and that's hard. I mean, one of the hardest things we do is feedback and getting it right and getting the timing right on your feedback. I don't know, some of you that have been teaching a while, you kind of know this, but isn't it hard to know when to give feedback and when to just let kids wrestle with it? But dendrites and neurons are talking, right? Dendrites. And what happens if we give feedback inappropriately, too soon, wrong time, or the wrong words being said? What happens to this that's going on? Right? The hardest thing that I think we have to do is our feedback and getting it right. And helping kids process why, because kids get, well, let's do it this way. How many of you have an academic area that you have a fixed mindset about? You just don't think you were born, you've actually said, I'm not wired for that. I really wasn't born to do that. And yet when you went to kindergarten, you thought you'd probably do all of this. Just trace it back. You thought you could do it, and now it's a fixed mindset. It's an area you don't think you're wired for. And you developed it because of internal motivation. You got dampened down, and where did it come from? Where did your internal, why did your internal motivator get dampened down that created a fixed mindset for you in an academic area? Trace it back, trace it back. Trace back your academic area. Mine was science, I told you science, second grade. Because not only could I compare my work to the other kids around me, the judges came up and they go, Tim, my teacher did, she says, Tim, the judges just want to know, did you really try to make soap or did you pick that up on the way to school? And they didn't mean it, but it affected me, but it affected. I mean, look, I'm 62, I remember that back in the day, right? From second grade, you remember yours too. Trace it back, share with a partner. Right? Your academic area, where did it come from?
I think it's because it just didn't come to me. I can't write my own
Okay, so let me bring you back. Does anybody want to share? I mean, one of the things I don't let you do is talk about that for too long because you'll need therapy after a while. What did you see it said or he had said that, right? Anybody want to share what does it mean? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Matt.
Math?
Tenth
Can I
grade.
ask you this question? How many the rest of us said math?
Thank you.
Look at this. Isn't that something? Raise your hand again, Matt. Wow, that's over half of us. Okay, go ahead. So, yeah.
10th grade geometry theorem.
10th grade geometry theorem. Wow, that's really specific. Okay. And
There was a point where it was like, I don't understand why you're telling me this is true.
Oh, I know.
You can't like show me it's true or whatever. I don't remember what it was, but from then on it was dumb.
I know. Yeah, she couldn't explain the reason, the relevancy of it. Why is it?
This is what I said.
Yeah. Yeah, we just do it because it's on the test. Or we do or right, it's in the book. Who uses it? Where? How? When? Got a video of it? I'd love to see it in action. Something. Yeah, the great teachers are finding the relevancy of their learning targets and their explicit success criteria, right? Because I ran across the science teams, and they said every time after we finish out our units of instruction, and we prepare the unit overview sheets, our next question to ourselves is how are we going to hook kids into this learning? How are we going to make it relevant? And sometimes actually they write about it. They actually process and write about it, how it's relevant. So they actually had to think through why we're teaching some of the concepts we're teaching kids. Yeah, so our very first thing after we've identified the learning targets is what are our hooks in kids' worlds today. But see, you just couldn't make it relevant. There's no hook into the learning. You just memorize it, know it, do it. Yeah, and kids who could do that, were some of the kids successful? Yeah, yeah, and some were not, because you couldn't really engage at the level. And what would have happened if you worked collaboratively and they kind of explored that with each other? And I mean, I love the guy Dan Myers out there. He's a math teacher, high school math teacher. You guys, math people, you know him? Yeah. He goes, I have the most difficult job in the world. I try to sell a product to a group of people who don't want to buy it. I teach high school math. He says the reason they don't want to buy it is we don't teach it in the real world. We teach it as plugging numbers into theorems and equations. And he says when we start teaching mathematics in the United States, when we start making our math books smaller and start teaching the concepts in terms of real world, that mathematics is a shortcut to solving real world problems, then our kids will become engaged in mathematics. Until we start doing that, he says, so I spend all my time knowing what the target is and trying to find the hook. And I'll go to YouTube, I'll go to all kinds of things, and I think, yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I love that he does that, but if he's the only one in this school doing that, then we just have pockets of greatness like we've always had. We've always had people doing this kind of stuff. There's always been teachers who do this kind of understanding. But that's pockets, and you never can be a great school unless we're having the chance to organize and share that out collaboratively, is how you probably see it too, right? Yeah, so how will, knowing what your mission is, to continue to create these environments that fosters this continuous learning and create students who will be successful in society, how will that affect you? How will knowing that why you meet connects to your mission, how might that affect you? Well, I'll give you some clues of what Bill Farrader says. Bill Farrader is a 6th grade teacher in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. He's an author about professional learning communities, so he writes books about it. I love Bill because he's my go-to guy, because he's like, field tested, it all works because it's field tested, and he gives you the teacher's perspective of the professional learning community process, his understanding of it. He says, so when we meet, we know the reason that we meet. We go in there knowing that we're going to increase student achievement. By increasing student achievement, we'll accomplish the mission that we have set ourselves on. He says that requires certain things of us. It requires that we have a growth mindset and that we are there to improve our instructional practices because we're trying to increase student achievement, always. We don't walk into the meeting with any other thought. Matter of fact, they have a poster that has this on there. Why are we here? Increase student achievement. How? By becoming more effective. What's that going to take? And they have this list of things it's going to take. Here's what it usually takes, right? You have to think big. You have to take actions. You have to be growth-oriented. You have to be goal and growth-oriented. What's your team's goal this year? What are some of the goals you have identified? You might not always do it by this time of the year, to be honest with you. Some teams wait until they have a little more data about their kids. But about this time of the year, you're starting to formulate your goals. What is our team going to try to accomplish? And those goals are stretch goals in many ways. They're like, how can we get all kids, right, to get there? And so sometimes they're called SMART goals, but at least the concept here is that we're going to be goal-oriented and growth-oriented. So we connect to our goals all the time, and that means we have to sometimes change our practices. I mean, what does a growth mindset teacher sound like? Right? What is a growth? I mean, have you ever thought about that? Because I've run across growth mindset teachers and I've run across fixed mindset teachers, right? Admit failure. I'm struggling here. A growth mindset teacher, I loved it. Oh gosh, Debbie, who was that fabulous teacher I talked about, who said, yeah, one conversation changed. Debbie would come in and she would just say, I need help. I need help. My kids are not motivated to do math. They're fine with reading and writing, but they're not motivated to do math. So her team would come in, or Leanne Rowar, who just would come in and says, whoo, I'm great, the math thing's working for my kids, but I'm struggling with how to teach kids how to write. You know, this is really an area I'm not familiar with. Or the science team that I ran across this high school science team. Talk about growth-oriented and goal-oriented, but you know what their conversation was about? Their conversation was about their textbook. Like, okay, you got to go with me on this one, right? So they're saying, okay, guys, are anybody else having a problem with kids comprehending the textbook that we just bought? And they go, yeah, these kids can't comprehend the text. What are we going to do? Growth mindset teacher. What are we going to do? And somebody came up with this idea. Now, engage with me here. They So how about this? To help them with their reading comprehension of the textbook, why don't we all commit to having kids read out of the textbook for 10 minutes every day? Can we do that? Let's all do that. If kids read more, one of the things I heard is if kids read more, they'll begin to have deeper comprehension. So let's have them read, would we all agree to having them read for 10 minutes every day out of the textbook? And another person says, wait a minute, I can barely get a lab in as it is. Now we're going to carve out 10 minutes every day to have them read the textbook. Are we sure that's the best thing to do? Following me? Growth mindset, but also questioning questioning the status quo, searching for answers. Growth mindset teachers search for answers. So they said, how about we ask somebody that knows something about reading? And so they found a reading teacher, an instructional coach, who gave them better ideas. Because 10 minutes every day wasn't going to increase comprehension, right? What was going to increase comprehension for those kids in that textbook?
Explicitly teaching reading.
Strategies of how to read technical text, and what somebody else said it, vocabulary. So the reading teacher said, you guys got to do a better job with vocabulary. Kids can read those words, they just have no mental image of what that means, and they don't know what the definition is. So you need to do some strategies for increasing vocabulary. Here are some strategies for having kids read technical text, and here's strategies for having them design visual images of vocabulary words. Because the last thing you want to do is waste time having them copy definitions out of the back of the book, which was their first thought when it came to vocabulary. So growth mindset teachers explore. They're goal-oriented and they explore, they think, how can we, and they stop every now and then, let an idea percolate. And then think about, so what do we need to do? What do we need to do? Growth mindset teachers. What does a fixed mindset teacher sound like? Real quick, talk to a neighbor. Because you might have run across, not here, but in another experience. Have you ever run across a fixed mindset teacher? And they're not just venting, they actually have, like, this permeates their whole experience of teaching, okay? What does a fixed mindset teacher sound like? Talk to each other real quick. Okay, so they're like Debbie was before she put herself in a different way of thinking, right? There's no way we can help these kids learn because of their parents. Well, it's like the kindergarten team lead. I ran across her. I was working with the team leads at this elementary school, and she's talking to the first grade team lead. She goes, hey, remember last year how we sent you all those kindergartners ready to read, write, and do math on level? And the first grade team lead goes, do we remember? You have no idea how great this year has been because of what you guys did last year. Did we not thank you? Let me tell you, thank you. We've been able to take these kids so much further than we've ever been able to do before. And the kindergarten team lead looks at her first grade team lead in the eye and says, well, it's not happening this year. And you think, wow, this is February. How can you say that in February? Or you could be like the social studies teacher I ran across. They were doing teamwork. They were doing teamwork. In fact, I was in doing consulting when I was a project manager, one of the project managers for PLCs in the state of Missouri. And I run across this social studies team. I go, it's pretty good. They're actually debriefing about a common assessment. And they're talking about what kids got right and what they got wrong and that kind of stuff. And in the middle of the data huddle, this guy leans over, he says, hey, can I talk to you after everybody else leaves? I said, sure. Yeah. Then they got back into the work. Then after everybody else leaves, he says to me, so Tim, I figured out that you and I are about the same age. Which, seriously, I just wanted to say, are you sure? You look so much older than I do. You look older than I did, at least for my age. We checked it out. We were both the same age. I said, when did you graduate from high school? He said, 1974. I said, I did too. I said, so yeah, we're about the same age. He said, so let's be honest with each other. When you were a student in school, didn't you know there were just some dumb kids? And aren't we just trying to hide the fact that we've got some dumb kids in our classrooms? There's some kids we got in our classrooms who are never going to be able to do this. You've heard it, like maybe they're not much smarter than a bump on a log, their elevators don't go as high as other kids' elevators, that kind of jazz. In other words, he's revealing the culture. They may be doing the work, but he's revealing a culture about, can we get all kids to learn at high levels? And he says, no. What would you say? See, in a professional learning community, you actually address that, right? He's asked the question. He asked the question, aren't there just some dumb kids? We got some kids who are never going to be able to do it. He just happened to ask it of me because we're the same age. What would you say? In some schools, people just shrug their shoulders. They go, that's just Bill being Bill. He's always that way. And that will affect Bill's instruction in the classroom. It'll affect his effort. It'll affect what he tries. He already has made up his mind. Teacher's attitude about student performance, 1.62 effect size. He's already made up his mind that these kids can't do it. How would you help Bill? Quick conversation. Because if you let it go, you're not helping Bill. Right? Let it go, you just let that. And what happens is it all becomes toxic. Right? Bill's not just venting anymore. Venting happens once in a blue moon. When we have had a frustrating day. Anybody had one of those venting moments? Be okay with that, everybody. We have it. I mean, it's a hard job, for Pete's sakes. Vent, get it over with, get back to the business. Like the kindergarten teacher, it's fine. Vent for a moment and then get back to business. The business is to collect your colleagues together, identify which kids don't know it, and get busy in February and work tirelessly until the end of May to close which kids' gaps and what gaps they have. And think about addressing it, you know, think big, act, be goal-oriented. That's what we mean by goal-oriented, and have a growth mindset, right? What would you say to Bill? I mean, how would you handle that? Aren't there just some dumb kids? Oh, just talking to them. Hard to say that out loud. Testing your thoughts. Testing your thoughts. What would you say to them? I've asked that question of groups all over the United States and abroad even. So I'm curious about what some things you would say. I'll tell you some of the things I've heard, but what would you say?
Answer it with a question.
Answer it with a question. What would your question might be?
I would just say, what strategies have you used in the classroom?
Yeah.
What has been working, what hasn't been working?
Sure, explore, like give deference to the idea that we need to keep working and exploring, right? So what have you tried? What would you do differently? Yeah, what are you willing to try differently, right? So explore with questions. What else could you say?
Does achievement have to look the same for every
Does
student?
achievement have to look the same for every student? I mean, our goal here is to get all students to achieve at high levels, and that means we have to think about what we do differently. What is that going to, so the instructional strategy might have to change, right? What else might you say? Might not be a question, might just be a direct statement you make to Bill.
Would you say the same thing that with your own child we were talking about?
Wow. What if it was your child? Would you want your child, if they were struggling, would you want your child's teacher just automatically labeling them? Or would you want that teacher doing something about engaging your child and finding a different strategy, methodology, way of doing business, a different approach? I look at it and I think, I asked that question as in Wyoming. Anybody know Wyoming very well? Wyoming's an interesting state. They are really plain-spoken people that just have a heart to, the social studies teams that we would just tell them to quit whining and cowboy up. That's what we tell them. I go, I'm not sure what that means. I think I got an idea. That's not the horse we're on. We ride this horse, so cowboy up and get on that horse, right? Another team in Wyoming said, we would tell them, what do you think your job is? Your job is to take kids who are dumb at things, because it's new stuff, and help them be smarter by the end of every day. That's the job. What do you think it is? Right? I told him yes. I said, yeah. When I was a student in school, I thought there was, you're asking me when I was a student in school, did I think there were some dumb kids? I said yes. We saw it. But you understand that was I graduated in 1974, so you guys have never had some of those experiences, right? You don't have yearbook pictures that look like that. That's the English department, right? How many of you have your yearbooks from your high school days? You pull one out, yeah. So I pulled this one out. Oh, this really answers this story because I said, yeah. When I was a student in high school, I thought there were some dumb kids because honestly, I saw teachers dismiss kids, let them off the hook. There were people sleeping in classrooms. Kids were dropping out of school. You know, if you could do it, if you could get it the first time, you were going to be successful. If you couldn't get it the first time, too bad for you, right? And man, did they do everything, graded everything. I mean, it's just amazing, right? How they did business. But it was totally sort and select, right? Pick the winners, not create winners for all kids. Right? So I told them about two teachers. I said, first of all, well, I actually told them about one. I served with two teachers in this picture. That's Sally Mae Chambers. Sally Mae was my Latin teacher. Yeah, I took Latin in high school. You know, anybody else take Latin when you were in high school? You remember anything from it? Some of those words. Yeah, I remember two things. Yeah, I remember a quote. She had it above the doorway. It is from the Greek historian Plutarch. It says, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but rather wood to be ignited." Isn't that profound? Not that she did it, but it was a great quote. It was conjugate. It was like, you can't even use Latin very often, right? But the second thing I remember was actually another quote written in the book by the previous student. Latin is a dead language, it's plain enough to see, it killed off all the Romans, and now it's killing me. You definitely got to erase those things, right? But, yeah, I actually circled her because she was tough, right? She drilled, that kind of stuff, and she never smiled, so I thought, I'll show she does smile. We never saw that smile in class, but she does smile. This teacher, though, wow, Miss Van Hook ahead of her time. What I know about teaching and learning and the art and science of that has been brought forth because of Dr. Bob Marzano and others, she was doing. People who study formative assessment, she was doing it in 73 in my junior English class. That's my junior English teacher. So she was giving you very explicit success criteria back in 73. Sometimes we call them rubrics now. That word wasn't part of the vocabulary of educators back then. It was the scoring guide. So she gave you that, and she had you apply it. She was heavy on the writing. Ooh, heavy on the writing. So she had you apply the scoring guide to anonymous work, and she shared both good examples and weak examples to have you compare and contrast that, which helps get kids clear on the target. I know that now. I didn't know that back then. I just thought, oh, okay, this is what you need to look like when you write. This is what great writing looks like. This is what weak writing looks like, and this is how she's going to score it. So she was actually causing us to compare work to exemplars, right, and think about the target we were after before that was the thing to do. She never wrote on her paper, but I thought that was interesting. All my other teachers graded your papers, wrote all over your paper, all over your work, gave you corrections to do. She never wrote on your paper. She just figured out how to pull you up to the desk for a 1-minute conference. She didn't want to mess up your work. She didn't want to destroy. She just wanted to have a conference with you, which was really powerful. Because in that conference, she had all these things about asking questions of you. Not telling you, asking questions of you, helping to clarify, thinking about how you could extend that thought or that paragraph or that thesis or that, right? She was good at that feedback. She was so good. She compared your work to famous authors before that was the thing to do. Authors that you knew, that she knew you knew about. So one time she says to me, "Tim, you keep writing like this, you could be the next Thoreau." Now she knew I was reading Thoreau because she gave you choice and voice in what you read. There's this list of masterpieces, so you don't have to read one. You can form a study group with others, and it's the same concept of understanding these great works and body of work, but you could have choice and voice. And not everybody had to read Romeo and Juliet or whatever it was, right? Yeah. She would pull all the junior English students together, and they would read the work of students, right? So I thought I became a better writer. I was an okay student in school. I felt like I was a great kid. I thought like I could be a writer because of Mrs. Van Hook. In that classroom, though, was a student who, back to the story about being dumb, who kids didn't think they'd be dumb. I mean, everybody thought Denny was dumb. Denny was in that classroom, and as long as I've known Denny, he'd been ridiculed, made fun of, picked on, bad example. I mean, I could not imagine, I didn't do it, but honestly, I thought, what is his life like? I mean, you would have to have empathy, but just what is his life like come to school? People talk about him in the hallway, you know, didn't have high expectations of him, he'd pick up things here and there. In some of my other classrooms, he didn't do any work ever, right? And teachers were okay about that. They said, well, if that's what he wants to do, if he's not more motivated, then tough. Let him drop out and see how he does, right? They didn't even think for a second about how their actions or inactions were contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Then he's 16, he's 15, he's making some bad decisions, or he's not motivated, or he has gaps in his learning, and the teachers are just going, he's just a dumb kid. And people were picking that up. She didn't believe that. She believed she could get all kids to learn at high levels. I mean, she was geared in on Denny just like she was geared in on any other kid in her classroom. I saw that kid come alive in his learning. For the first time I had known him, he was doing his work, he was turning in his work. I have an image, the same image that I have of me up there at desk, I mean, from 73, folks, from 1973. How many years ago was that, right? I remember her saying these, I remember her working with Denny, and I know for a fact that she read one of his pieces of work as the kind of work that should come from a junior English student. And I stop now and I think, I bet you she could have read others. She just knew her kids and the students. This is something that's going to give him that bump, to inspire and motivate and charge him on. Because I'm going to read. She did it anonymously because she knew that some people want that anonymous, right? The anonymity to their work. So the best story would be that Denny became a famous writer. Wouldn't that be a great story? He did it. None of us did, right? Wish I could tell it that way. Wouldn't it be good? Ooh, yeah, we made a difference in the world. She did. She helped him to see himself as a learner, someone who, right, had the capability of doing it. Now, the thing about this is, you can't circle every teacher. I can circle a few other teachers on that I encountered, but she was like definitely one of the best instructional practices. Other people on there, they believed they could get kids to learn at high levels. They created a warm environment. They did some really great things, but you can't say that the entire department was. But when you're a professional learning community school, and you've reached that model school status, nobody, like I said, is calling, requesting certain teachers. Can my son have Miss Savannah? They would say, it doesn't matter who your kid's teacher is. We guarantee that they all have high expectations for students. We guarantee that they're going to help all kids learn. They're not going to let any kid off the hook. They're going to insist that they master the concepts that we've deemed the most important concepts for them to master. That's what we do. You can't say that in 1973 because people didn't organize for it in 1973. 1973, it was not that kind of world for kids in their learning. It didn't have to be. Kids didn't have to go on to post-secondary education to find some success in the middle-income family life. Now they have to have it. So when you join in the journey, right, just kind of remember that the thing to say when you say that aren't there some dumb kids, we say like Bob says, kids aren't broken. Let's stop labeling them, right? They need more help. We should teach them the skills, not just label kids. The concept of the event requires us to have a growth mindset and be goal-oriented to that effort. The other thing you have to do is this, share knowledge and skills according to Bill Ferreter. Our team shares knowledge and skills. Our team looks at results. We're result-oriented. They say hungry for data. We're starving for the data. And we want to know what it is in short cycles, right? The faster we know it, the quicker we can respond. So they're looking at really short cycle assessments with their kids to be results-oriented. And the final thing is, from that point, we determine our priorities and we create excellence. And therefore, all of us, there is no I in team. Instead, we think of this, that I is every person's individual commitment to those four things. Right? Vincent Lombardi's got the best quote. I saw that Brad has these posters made up. He has this quote on the posters that he's going to put around the building at some point in time. Because the reality is this, right? Individual commitment to a group effort. That's what makes a team work, a company work, a society work, a civilization work. So your mission statement, that's your group effort. That's why you meet It might not have been what you said you hoped to anticipate, but if you do the actions that you said you would, when you meet together, you'll accomplish this particular mission. So let's put ourselves on the journey of what this really means, and we've got just enough time to do this, all right? So what I want you to do very, very quickly is I want you to partner up with someone that's either in front or behind you, so not next to you. So can you do that real quickly? All right, partner up with someone either in front. Not everybody turn around, because then nobody has anybody to partner with. So find someone front and back, partner up with them. Very good. Very good. You can stand or sit, whichever you want to be, all right? Now, Bob Aker, who I just showed you his picture, he's the ones that we shouldn't label kids. He says, look, the professional learning community is something you don't put screws down so tight on that you can't operate in the whole concept. Some people have put the screws down so tight that all we do is answer 4 questions. We got to go bigger and understand this deeper. So he says, why don't we just take a common sense approach to this? Common sense means there are certain things that, because I think that's the way to go, right? A common sense approach means there are certain things we all support in our effort as members of a professional learning community, right? And we take a common sense approach to that. So I'm going to just kind of give a formative assessment to see if we have a common sense approach to this, okay? So to do this, I need you to, with your partner, I need to have one of you facing the screen and the other person have their back to the screen. Can you do that very quickly? And you have to be able to see the screen, so you have to be able to see the screen.
I'm a little
Okay, now give yourself some space. Give yourself some space from others, all right? Because here's what we're going to do. This is so, I mean, it should be common sense. To me, the world has to have dots that connect. When I make it a common sense dot pattern, it helps me. Maybe it helps other people. So we're going to connect the dots in the game called the $25,000 Pyramid. Without the $25,000, of course. Right? And what we're going to do is this category. It's not the category things the dictator would say. We're doing things that you would know and promote as leaders of a professional learning community. Again, I put that leader word in there purposefully. The concept of leadership in this is that we're all help lead this up. It's not up to the individual principal to do that. Once we have you on board, we have you understanding that you're part of something bigger than yourself, and you're helping lead this effort in every interaction you have with yourselves and with kids, right? So all of us help lead the effort. So these things you're going to see on the screen are things you should be able to describe and know about and promote. You with me? So here's the rules. If you're facing the screen, you're going to give clues to what the words are that are on the screen. All right? I break the rules of the real game. I allow you to use hand motions. You can use phrases. The only thing you can't do is say the words, all right? You have to get the person to say the words. When your person gets it, I just need to know. Just celebrate real quick and that they got it, because we're not going to wait for everybody in the room to get it. Some people are more familiar with others, with these concepts than others, so it's easier for them. Others are just bad clue givers. We understand that too, all right? So do your very best, but here's how I'm going to work it. I'm going to get on the stage so I can see you clearly. When I see that we have about 8 to 10 groups that have gotten the word, I'm going to the next slide. When that happens, you just have to tell the person what you were trying to say, get them to say, and then start giving new clues. So let's check in with each other, all right? Talk to your partner and make sure you are clear on what's about to happen here. Okay, ready? Conversation.
Okay, well, I'm giving you an answer. Okay. Yes.
All right. Thumbs up. I'm going to caution. Every time I do this, after I've asked, make sure you're clear, I will still see someone playing charades and not say anything. Talk to them, right? So don't just do charades here. Use hand motions, phrases to these concepts. Are you ready? All right, people at the back of the screen, stay with your back to the screen. People facing the screen. Here are the first concepts we would know and promote in a professional learning community. Ready? Start describing.
Well, we all want to achieve. Oh my
Next concept, ready, go!
Set high standards.
That's what we want to do. I think that's
One, two, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's it. Here we go. Next set of words. Ready, go. Here we go. Next set of words. Ready, go. Next set of words. Ready, go. You guys get it? Hey. Next set of words. Ready, go. Switch.
I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this.
All right. Here we go. Ready? All right, so shake it off. You ready? Mr. Butler, can I just make a comment? Actually, some people are starting to give directions or an explanation of this. I love that. This is how Iowa people. We'll switch. That's when we move kids around and. Right? All right, new set of words. Here we go. These are things we promote and support in our efforts to be a professional learning community. Ready? Go. Here we go. Next set of words. Go. if you have access to the handouts, I have those same concepts on 2 pages, page 4 and 5 in the handout. And the whole thing of this journey of continuous improvement, you know that, right? The professional learning community model is built around the idea of continuous improvement. Continually improving, because we're all going to need to be, because every year we get a different set of kids, and we're continually improving our strategies, our resources, our methodologies, how we work together for collaboration. Everything is this constant cycle of continuous improvement, right? So when you look at those are the most important things that we find teams circle. The biggest one up there, honestly, is this one, high expectations. This work of the professional learning communities actually was born out of the work of the Correlates of Effective Schools. Correlates of Effective Schools, that was Ron Edmonds and Larry Lazat's work. They went out and they proved the teachers matter. At the time of their studies and research, there were reports coming out that teachers don't matter that much. A student's academic performance is based largely on the community that they live in. People were taking a look at data and well, look, kids who go into affluent schools, stable environment schools, they'll always do better than kids who come from high poverty schools or kids who come from backgrounds that you can almost predict don't support school or don't support the effort towards learning as much. So Edmonds and Lazat went out and studied high poverty schools that were getting great results. And from that, they found these 7 correlates, these 7 things that exist in every school. The most important one was a strong mission and vision, but the other one was a high expectations. They said there was a culture of high expectations in these highly effective schools. High expectations was defined this way, where goals are clearly communicated to everyone and every student, up and down the hallway. They'll hear the same message. What we're doing here is important. You can do this. We're not going to give up on you, even if you start to give up on yourself. Right? Those goals of all students, it's what you say, it's how you model it, it's how you organize for it. That's the highly collaborative work that you see here. The other correlate of effective schools, honestly, was the opportunity to learn and time on task to do the learning, knowing that it had to be varied for kids because of the backgrounds or what they come into schools with. Rick DeFore and Bob Ager, while they were practitioners, they were also fellows with the National Center for Effective Schools Research. So they understood the correlates and they put that idea of high expectations into play. He said, how do we create a school of high expectations? We have to have people work collaboratively. It can't be on the principal to do that. It has to be everybody getting on the same page with the goals and what we're trying to accomplish. And we accomplish really the great things through all those things that you see here. When we come back after lunch, I'm going to give you a little bit of team time to explore using a protocol of so what. The protocol, the S stands for strengths, the O stands for opportunities, and the what part stands for so what do we need to work on? What's 1 or 2 things? It's continuous improvement. You're already great. So we can list all the things you're great at. The next question is, what do we need to get better at? Of those things that we have to support. And from that, the journey just gets it just keeps getting enhanced. And that's where you all are. When we talked on the phone, we just want to enhance what we already have going on. We just want to be the world's best. And that just means enhancing where we currently are. So I want to give us a chance to do that when we come back from team time, okay? Meantime, let me thank you again for the second part of our morning together. I appreciate you doing the little silly activity of the $25,000 pyramid, but that's one way of looking at vocabulary, I guess, and having people explain it, all right? But those are our common sense approach, okay? Brad, anything for the group about time frames or lunch or anything?
Just a couple of things. If you would like to eat, we have tables set up inside the lobby here. Another option, if you'd like to, you can go outside and around the right hand in front of the building, you can go over and sit outside in the football bleachers, track bleachers if you'd like to. It's nice outside, you might want to do that. Make sure you bring your garbage, get rid of your garbage. There's really not supposed to be food or drink in here, so please don't bring stuff back in here afterwards. The
Well, it's up to you. Half hour, is that what you normally do?
Let's start at a half hour, 17 minutes.
15 minutes. Yeah. Normally it's 15 minutes, right? So, yeah. That's up to you. I mean,
I think they're just glad not to have kids sitting next to them while they're eating.
yeah, they're glad to have that, and they don't have to choose between the bathroom and lunch. So nice, right? Right. So.
10. We'll get back here. Valuable prizes.
Valuable prizes when we come back. All right. I love it. All right. Valuable prizes when we come back.
You were already there.
I would love to.
Did it get her? Right?
I've never heard myself scream.
Up there, or are we good to go?
No,